Good afternoon, councillors, members of the public, officers, welcome along. I declare this meeting open and I acknowledge this is Wadani Noongar Budja and I pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging. I'd like to welcome the Youth Mayor. Sean, welcome to you and members of your Youth Advisory. No, you're on your own. Good to see you. Councillors, under announcements, I'm very pleased to advise that the Mayor's Annual Variety Performance generated close to $10,000 net, which will be directed back to the 250 performers who provided outstanding entertainment that night. And again, I record my appreciation to everybody involved in that, and Councillor Warnock was one of those, so thank you very much to you, Councillor. Terrific night. How you split 10 grand into 250 performers is not my problem. I'm glad it's yours. I think we're all here. Councillors, are there any declarations of interest tonight? Public question time. Bianca Fletcher, would you like to come to the lectern, Bianca? Welcome to you. Just ask you 3 questions and I'll respond to each of those when you're finished.
Wonderful, thank you, and thank you for taking my questions. Can the City of Bunbury please advise what, if any, interactions with specific individuals, organisations or community groups inspired the initial pursuit of the proposed civic and cultural precinct as a concept independent of a multi-storey car park? Can the City of Bunbury please describe how an activation plan for the proposed precinct might differ from how utilisation of existing community open spaces is currently stimulated, such as at Bicentennial Square, the Graham Bricknell Soundshell, the Blair Street Foreshore and Queen's Gardens? And finally, can the City please describe what, if any, consideration has been given to making city-owned or supported facilities available to community-based, not-for-profit, non-manual arts community groups and programs, which would not otherwise be commercially viable either in the proposed precinct or anywhere else in the city?
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
In response to question 1, a working group was formed and 3 meetings were held between December 2015 and February 2016. Representatives in the working group included 3 elected members, that was myself, Councillors Kelly and Councillor Warnock, the adjacent property owner, a commercial real estate representative, a representative from the South West Development Commission, a professional architect, a professional town planner, a commercial builder, a representative from Advocacy South West and other private sector developers. Question 2, activation plans can be used for any space and provide more focus and detail. Question 3, I'm taking that on notice because there is a number of activities that the city does and I want to have that listed for you. And that'll be included in the minutes of the next council meeting, but you will receive those written responses to each of your questions. So thank you very much for your questions. Councillor, we move on to 711. Can I have someone move the minutes of the last ordinary council meeting? Councillor Cook, Councillor Hayward, all in favour? It's carried unanimously. And then the minutes of the special electors meeting. Someone move. Councillor Cook, seconder. Councillor Cleary, all in favour. That's carried unanimously. Thank you. We have 2 advisory committees minutes to note. So I'm prepared to move the Bunbury Roadwise and Heritage Advisory Committee minutes. Councillor Steele, seconder. Councillor Cook, all in favour. It's carried unanimously. Thank you very much. Are there any petitions, councillors? We have 3 requests tonight for presentations. Cheryl Kozisek wishes to speak on item 10.2.1. Those who agree, please indicate. That's agreed. Marina Quain also wishes to speak on that item. Those who agree, please indicate. That's agreed too. And I think there was one other. James Searle also wishes to speak on that item. Those who approve, please indicate. It's approved. So for those 3 speakers, I'll invite you up fairly shortly to make your comments. Now, I just want to point out to ladies and gentlemen of the audience that with item 10.2.1, there has been a change in the executive recommendation, so the printed copies on the seats contain the changes. For those of you who may have downloaded the document from the internet, those changes would not have been on there. So just bear with us while the executive recommendation will be showed on the screen behind me, so you can just see what those changes from the executive are. So councillors, coming out for more detail is item 10.2.1. There are no other items that I have. Does anybody wish to have any of those other items dealt in detail? If not, can I someone move the bulk? Councillor Cook, seconder. Councillor McCleary, all in favour? That's carried unanimously. So we come to item 10.2.1, and I invite Cheryl Kozisek to come forward. For each of the speakers, you have 5 minutes. There's a clock in front of me which will guide you. So welcome along.
Good evening, Mr Mayor, councillors. My name is Cheryl Kozisek. I'm the president of the Retail Co, but I'm also very interested in ratepayers. Thank you for allowing me the opportunity to speak against the motion, and let me explain why. Bunbury, along with most other towns and cities in Australia, is suffering from a huge downturn in retail spending, and I'm talking bricks and mortar retailers. Online shopping has decimated retail everywhere, and it will never be the same again. 2 more businesses closed over the weekend, Fashion House and Poco Loco. This puts the count of vacant premises, both retail and office space, at over 130 in the CBD alone. And these businesses have been closing over the last 3 years. It's really got quite serious. Now, we can say shop local and support small business until the cows come home, but the truth is it's more than that. I had a conversation last week with a lovely lady who said to me, Bunbury City has nothing to offer me and my teenagers, no shops, no experiences, we don't come in anymore. Now, I quite rudely said, well, you are the problem. But this is not true, and I did apologise to the lady because I thought about it and I thought, well, that's not the problem is the city. And it's not just our city, every city is going through this same problem. We have naively plodded along believing all would fix itself and normality would return eventually. We were wrong. We were all wrong about this. Landlords have continued to believe that the rents they asked were reasonable, and long-term leases tying up the tenant and all his worldly belongings for 10 years was still the norm. We need to look very hard at what we can offer anyone living or visiting our beautiful city, if we want them to stay, and we do want them to stay, and to enjoy, and most of all, spend precious dollars in our city. Now, the city obviously thought about this and decided to consult the community, and that is fantastic, because surely an engaged community is the answer. But this seems to have backfired. We now have a disillusioned community because after all the talking and all the asking and all the community consultation, what they wanted was totally ignored. The public consultation has occurred and was compiled into a 9-page report, clearly demonstrated that the community did not see the need for the cultural precinct at this time. They told us what they would like to see: the train station back in the city, back beach bars, more sporting facilities, artificial reef, CBD living and a youth precinct. And some of those boxes we can tick. The South building was purchased without community consultation, as far as I can tell, for the cost of $2.4 million to be an integral part of this cultural precinct. It sits idle and empty, despite a very prominent business wanting to relocate into the heart of the CBD to help bring some vibrancy back into our city. This business owner confided in me that the price was way too high in the current economic climate, especially when the city would only offer them a short-term lease. So the city has already spent $3 million on a project that nobody seems to want, and I've yet to see a need identified, excepting that I believe Bragg is a little short on hanging space. My concern is the benchmark has been set very low for a project to get the go-ahead in Bunbury by undertaking the business case for the cultural and civic precinct when we determined that 4.1% of the community had said that they are in favour of the project. So out of 67 comments, that's 0.94 of a person who said, yes, this is great. At what point did the community say yes to this? And why did the city decide to prioritise an item that the community had clearly not been in support of? We've talked about bringing a university into the city, and with it, student accommodation. We need a hotel. What about some aged care right in the city? A marina. All the things that bring population and with that, economic stability. Then the cultural and civic precinct may be a viable project. Without economic stability, which will give us a thriving CBD, there is no point in continuing with this major project. So this should not be the first cab off the rank. Let's stop and look at an overall vision for our city. We have an opportunity to do so much more, and indeed, the officer's key recommendations said as much. It seems we have focused quite heavily on one big project when in reality we could be pursuing most of the items on the list and formulating a plan of action and preferences regarding timeframe and expenditure. The other projects on the list that our community have stated the need for should in all fairness be given the same level of attention as the cultural precinct. Now, as an interior designer, my job is to give the client an overall picture of what every room in their home is going to be as a finished product, and that includes full costings and timeframe. I would be very remiss if all of my efforts were concentrated on the lounge room and I spend all the allocated budget with no thought whatsoever to the other rooms.
Because you need to close.
I've just got one paragraph. Thank you, Mayor.
Is it a long paragraph?
No, it's actually really quite short. Thank you. I believe the motion is totally inadequate in its vision for Bunbury, and I urge you, Mr Mayor and councillors, to consider using an alternative consultation process and consider the precinct in context with all of these items that were asked for and potential projects, and that they be given the same attention to detail as the cultural precinct. Let the people decide on the needs. And thank you very much for allowing me the opportunity.
Thank you. Marina Quine. You're up next, Marina.
Sorry.
Welcome to you. Can you see the clock in front of me there? Yep.
So good evening, Mr Mayor and councillors, and thank you. My name is Marina Quine, and thank you for allowing me the opportunity to speak for the motion item 10.2.1 on tonight's agenda. I extend my sincere gratitude to our council, our CEO and staff for their resources and time involved in hosting the special meeting of electors. Also, thank you to the council for engaging with the community by allowing the electors meeting to proceed by acknowledging the motion tabled at tonight's council meeting. Thank you to those that attended the electors meeting and tonight's council meeting, and those watching on the live stream. I commend the executive recommendation of acknowledging the motion that was moved at the special meeting of electors. I support item 6, requesting the CEO to convene a special community information session in November 2019 on the topic of the Civic and Cultural Precinct to allow community members to ask questions of elected members and staff, as well as provide further feedback about the proposed project. This is a great opportunity for further public consultation on the precinct. The community will be able to engage, learn and discuss any of their concerns with elected members and staff. Thank you, executive team, for including this item in your recommendation. If I may, could the council please consider quantifying what is deemed good support and viable when determining funding for further development of this precinct? I am keen to hear council speak on item 10.2.1 and respect any outcome achieved. In closing, thank you council and city staff for engaging with our community, and I hope the community continue to remain engaged with council and city staff by participating in future public consultation on any item or projects that are of importance to the direction of our beautiful city, Bunbury. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr Searle. Welcome to you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councillors, my name is James Searle. I am a registered ratepayer, and I'd like to speak for the motion 10.2.1. I believe Bunbury cannot afford to invest $30 million or thereabouts in an art precinct. I believe it is not in the best interest of the community at this stage. In this, I believe it is not the will of the majority of the ratepayers. Now I'd like to refer to the response to my question last week by the CEO. Having read a bit of the history of the South Building, I believe the council was advised that the purchase price of that building was not the market valuation. Since purchase, the building has not just cost a few dollars, but it is lost around about $19,000 a year in lost rates and taxes, as well as the utilities, the insurance, and such like. That's a fair amount of money. Not to mention the $2.4 million of capital that's just taxpayers' money just lying there. Acquire wanted to rent the building, and their offer was too low. Now the question is, what is too low in this economic climate? We should listen to the market and heed. At this stage of the economy, a bird in the hand is worth about 5 in the bush. In my opinion, Bunbury has one white elephant in the form of South's building. Do we need another white elephant? Where's the economic case and benefit and analysis of the Arts Centre? And will Council actually heed advice of independent consultants should due diligence indicate that the course of action should be avoided? Will it be in the best interest of the ratepayers to go ahead with this action? The Vintage Car Association, or something like that, is keen to get the show in at the South's building. Is it not a good idea to put arts and crafts and vintage cars all in one building and see how it works? Every day on world news we hear we're on the precipice of a recession. Is it time to go into debt during this time? Instead of spending a large amount of money on an art precinct before we try it out, why don't we have a moving art centre around all hotels, cafes, restaurants? And I can promise you that not one business owner is going to complain when they have a lot of people coming into the businesses. Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Councillor.
Thank you.
I'm happy to move your motion, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Hayward moves executive recommendation. Is there a seconder? Councillor McCleary. Councillor Hayward.
Thanks very much, Mr. Mayor. Look, I certainly do appreciate the change of the executive recommendation. I think that councillors that were here and the community will really benefit from the opportunity to have a more open say. And when I suggested that to the CEO, to his credit, and thank you for that, took it on board and spoke to, I think, both the mover and seconder of that motion to confirm that that was in line with where they thought we needed to be going. I said earlier today that one of the challenges we had is that it was a bit like ordering a steak sandwich and eating it and then thinking that afterwards that you should have had the garden salad, because we had a very formal electors meeting, and what we probably really need to do was really have a far more informal discussion with the community. And what Six will do is allow us to be able to have that discussion with the community a lot more freely and a lot more adequately to be able to provide the answers to the questions that many people turned up and had. I admit that I was a bit frustrated that night, to be honest, as well, because there's some things that I would really like to have said, but obviously in that particularly formal format we didn't all have the opportunity. So by adding that in, and having it after the new council turns up in about 3 rounds or in about 6 weeks, I think that's a fantastic opportunity to revisit. We'll have some new members of council who can also have some input there. I think it is important as well, as was presented, that we all do understand that this is a long process, that these ideas are in their infancy largely, although they have developed a little bit in terms of having some plans drawn. And that one of the things that this particular motion calls us to do is to provide a business case. As the community was informed, that's exactly what the council is undertaking. And obviously decisions, I think from memory, that this particular cultural and civic precinct has come back to council on about 6 occasions already to have some discussion in a public way that the public are aware of. Certainly this special electors meeting has made it clear that some of the public were not aware of what was being proposed, and it's certainly been helpful, I think, in terms of raising the profile of this particular project. And I think that will spark some good debate and good, hopefully some really good feedback. We've had some feedback tonight already, but some more feedback for people to be able to give the council in relation to making these decisions. So I do recommend this this motion to you. I think that it is the spirit of what the special electors meeting was trying to do in terms of being able to engage and have effective communication with our community. Of course, we are all elected members sitting around here. It is our job to represent the people of this city, and we want to do that in a way that in the way that people feel that they are being represented. And so I think, I'd just like to recommend this to you. Thank you.
Councillor McCreary.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I was very pleased to hear that the electors feel that they have got satisfaction with this motion, and that is all I have to say. I'm very pleased to hear that. In spite of how we got around to it in the long run, the end result is we have something here that the electors are satisfied with, and we will be having the public consultation. And I assure you, we did listen. We have listened, and we thank you for that. I thank you for that.
Councillor Kelly, I believe you've got an amendment.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. Yes, I do have an amendment in the form of an addition, and I will read it. It's to request the CEO to convene a City of Bunbury Projects Expo, where all major city projects, including the proposed civic and cultural precinct, are showcased to the community, providing opportunities for updates, concepts, input and feedback. And Mr Mayor, if I can get a seconder, I would just like briefly to speak to it.
I'll second that, Mr Mayor.
Yeah, I'm just wondering whether Councillor Hayward and McCleary would agree to incorporating that into your motion. No? Okay. Seconded by Councillor Warnock. The seconder has to agree as well. So, Councillor Kelly, your floor.
Thank you, Mr Mayor, and I will only be brief. There was a lot spoken about engagement and city engagement with the community, which is one thing. City, council, community, one. One of the speakers tonight spoke of other projects that we have on the drawing board: the train, the Back Beach Baths, the Reef, CBD Living, the Youth Precinct, the Marina, the Youth Precinct particularly, Destination Park, and there are quite a number of other projects right throughout Bunbury that we have on the drawing board. Councillors are aware of most of them. The City of Bunbury Projects Expo is designed or conceptualised to bring all of those projects into one place so that the whole of the community can come out on a particular day and look at and see what we're doing. When you do one project, you might get a few people who rock up, but you've got an audience of 10, 20. If you've got 10 projects, 12 projects, 15 projects, you multiply, you get a factor. And I think it's important that if I hark back to City Vision back in the early 2000s when we organised a particular day to invite people through, it was at the Entertainment Centre, as I recall. I think Councillor Steck was there in those days. And we got people coming through the doors all day to see what this City Vision was about. I believe that if we set up a City of Bunbury Projects Expo where people come and have a look at all of those different facets, it's better than rent a crowd. If we need to, we'll have a sausage sizzle. If we need to, we'll have some face painting. We'll have some entertainment. But what we do is we say to people, oi, over here, not just one thing to look at, half a dozen, 10, whatever the case may be. And I think it's important at this particular juncture in time to ensure that we encourage that engagement and bring people through the doors. It is an addition to Social Pinpoint, Survey Monkey, getting out there and doing something in the community, putting an ad in the paper, etc. So it can only add to the engagement process. So I ask councillors to support the amendment as an addition to what we have up there and move forward. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Councillor Warnock, do you wish to speak?
Yes, just briefly, thanks, Mr Mayor. Look, I don't think you can have too much community consultation. The more the better. I think this is a great idea of Councillor Kelly's. If you recall, when we were communicating about the marina, we consulted and consulted and consulted and held meeting after meeting after meeting until people just said, for God's sake, get on with it. Everyone agreed. The more you communicate, the more people understand. So, great idea. Thanks, Councillor Kelly, and I would urge councillors to support this number 7. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there a speaker against the amendment? Oh, Councillor McCleary. Yes, you can.
Thank you. I think it's very important. I think it's a great idea. And I think as a recommendation and a motion, standing on its own, I would be 100% for it. We are dealing tonight with a very important issue here, a one issue. I don't want to see a distraction happening with this particular issue that we have on board. We're going to have a consultation on the topic of the civic cultural precinct, okay? Now, if we start loading it up, what we want to talk about is going to be diluted. So I believe that please stay with what we have here for this particular issue, which is the precinct, and certainly come back, Councillor Kelly, with a recommendation and a motion to put forward the idea of a City of Bunbury Expo. Yes, thank you.
Speaker 4, Councillor McGwell.
I wasn't going to speak, Mr Mayor. I think Councillor Kelly wrapped it up pretty well, but I think Councillor McCreary just probably hit on the head there for me. When you're talking about one specific issue, this is bigger than one issue, and I think over the last week this has been the issue that has caused. We're talking about a civic and cultural precinct, but what we're talking about is bigger than that. We asked the CEO, he's got a KPI to deliver us business cases for some major projects. This is one of those major projects. So to go and say we're going to get rid of this major project or we're going to focus on this, that's not how we're doing things. We need to have a look at all our major projects. Give us business cases for the civic and cultural precinct. Give us business cases for the water park, whatever it may be, but let's have a look at them. Let's have a look at opportunities we can do. Anyone who knows me knows I'm probably not much of an artsy kind of person. I'm obviously more sport orientated, but that doesn't go away with the fact if we have a business case come back to us and that business case comes along saying there's a civic and cultural precinct being built in the CBD, and one of the opportunities is there might be a university attached to it, exactly what you're talking about. How good would that be? And obviously it would be a no-brainer not to take that opportunity. So I think talking about what we're talking about, this isn't going to override the previous recommendation. So number 6 still will occur. We still will have the opportunity to have come next door or wherever it may be, have a discussion about, yes, this particular project, but then, yes, as Councillor Kelly has pointed out, we need to look at all our plans, look at all our projects, what's going to work, what opportunities do we have, and of course what risks are there. There are obviously going to be risks with whatever project we take on. We need to have a look at what is possible, what we can go on, and obviously choose which one is going to be best, potentially then come forward with a plan. But until we lay these out on the table, we can't just pick which one's going to be going here or here. So we need to have a look at all of them, and I think this sums it up pretty well. So I encourage councillors to support this one.
Thank you. Further speaker against? Councillor Kelly, to close. I'll put the amendment all in favour. Those against? 1. Councillor McCreary is against. That's carried. The amendment becomes part of the substantive motion, so we have a 7 in there. Is there a speaker against the substantive motion, which includes points 1 through to 7? That being the case, I'll put it all in favour. That's carried unanimously. Thank you. We have no applications for leave of absence. Councillors, anybody wanting leave? No further business. Thank you, councillors. Thank you, members of the public. Thank you, officers. I declare this meeting closed at 5:59 p.m.